All right. Hey, everybody, we're back. We've got a great session. Again, hope you enjoyed our general session. We're now moving into two terrific education sessions. As you know, the Carolinas District works really, really hard to ensure that we deliver relevant and important educational opportunities. Now, being in the middle of a global pandemic isn't going to stop us from fulfilling that commitment and delivering to our members. So with that, I would like to turn things over to our immediate past governor, Greg McDonald, who will be leading our first educational session. All right, Greg, take it away.
We've got four important questions we want to answer for you today as a part of this session. I'm going to be joined by Joe Krostick, who is going to co-present this with me. We're going to talk a little bit about your overall plan and planning for your club. We're going to start with what's your club's vision of the future and how are you going to make whatever your dream is become a reality in your community. We want to do that particularly with the idea of the COVID problems that we're facing, with the idea of rethinking new ways to achieve old goals. And as you heard from Dave Kelly just a few minutes ago, you need to be creative and you need to think not so much about what you need to do, but how you go about doing it. And then we'll talk a little bit about the importance of planning, and we're going to raise those issues with you today in the next several minutes. Remember back in the day when you went back to school right after summer break and we all returned to school from summer vacation, the first writing assignment was always, what did you do on your summer vacation? And I think this is the way many of us are starting to feel right now this year. The answer is nothing. And for many of us, we're not even being allowed to go back into the classrooms. Students are still on virtual learning. And many clubs have literally just kind of shut down because they didn't have a clear vision of what they wanted to accomplish for their community. And they didn't think critically about how they could continue under the COVID restrictions that we have to deliver service that will fulfill that vision. In other words, they didn't plan for the new normal. But COVID is going to be with us for a while. So how do we get back on track? Well, it all starts with a dream. And whatever you do, your club has to have a dream, or as we could call it, a vision for what do you want for the future. When I visit a club, I often ask them, what's your vision for the future of this club? And I quite often get met with some blank stares coming back at me the opposite direction. So it may surprise you that many of these clubs respond with a long silence, but a lot of clubs have not thought through what their future looks like and what it is they want to accomplish in the future and what they want the legacy of that club to be in the community. They don't have a clear picture of where they need to go, and they don't have a common understanding among their club members. It's kind of like looking at this picture. If you set out to find a picture of a fuzzy puppy, that's fine, but you may show up with a fuzzy picture of a puppy instead if you don't have a common understanding among your members. You also need a roadmap. You need a guide to get you where you need to go. And the roadmap that we had 4 months ago or 5 months ago at the beginning of this whole COVID crisis is probably not the roadmap we need to do today. We need to be conscious of the fact that there's more than one way to get there. Point A to point B, and we can always go in a different direction. But what we need to do with our clubs is make sure that we're all headed in the same direction. The COVID is actually aggravating the confusion over what direction are we heading. And so now more than ever, the message we're going to give to you is that planning is critical. Your planning for your club at the beginning of your Kiwanis year, each year, needs to unify your vision, needs to provide clear direction. You need to lead the search for creative solutions. You need to have a conscious process that sets up, that allows you to engage in critical thinking among your members. It's doing things differently, but it's also doing different things, as Dave has already set the stage for us. And the other thing is is keep you from heading down rabbit holes or on wild goose chases. The idea of having a clear direction and knowing where you're going to go. At the Kiwanis Club level, that means pretty much developing a planning process that starts with this vision statement that we've talked about. What do we want to become? How do we want to communicate our purpose to our club members, to our shareholders? What is the mission of this club? Who are we and what do we value? And then it goes into what we've traditionally called strategic planning, which is pretty much how we will achieve our particular vision. And the components of the strategic plan are not just laying out that strategy, but laying out the tactics, the goals and objectives for how are we going to accomplish what we want and how are we going to know when we get there? What's the gauge of success? But it all starts with the vision, and that's where the journey is. And that comes back to my statement about you have to have a dream. So what is your vision statement? Reveals where the club wants to be in the future, how the club is going to be regarded within the community, and what impact the club will have on the community. The vision statement is the cornerstone of any strategic plan that you develop because it's where you want to head. It's your direction. I'll give you an example from our club, from the Kiwanis Club of Southport Oak Island. Our vision statement, Kiwanis Club of Southport Oak Island will be a positive influence in our community so that one day all its children will live in a community that believes in them, nurtures them, and provides them the support they need to thrive. Now, we have pulled from that Kiwanis International vision statement and added things that make it specific to our community. You can do the same thing. You can do whatever the vision is for your particular club. But basically, you need to establish what the dream is. You need to brainstorm it at a club meeting. That's kind of the process you're going to go through. You'll find if you do this, if you engage your club members in the discussion, that I think you'll be amazed at some of the things that you'll get. In just a minute, I'll suggest to you how you can go about that. But that brainstorming will be eye-opening. I think it'll be motivational for your club. It'll energize your members' commitment to the club. And it doesn't take very long. It's a simple, easy process to go through. And the way to do it is just to have a conversation. You can do it at a club meeting. You can do it at other times. We're suggesting prompts or questions that whoever is going to facilitate this can ask. There's generally 3 questions when I visit a club, or whether it's a large club or a small one. You can ask the same 3 questions, or you can modify them in any way you want. But you want to use some prompts that are going to share what makes the club special. You want to think about the reasons that people and the partnerships want to keep things going, and you think about what is needed most in your community. So the 3 questions that I generally ask a club when I go to do that process are these. I start off with the whole idea of saying to everybody in the room, why are you a Kiwanian? And everybody has an answer to that. Everybody in that room knows why they're there. That may be different from why they're there today than why they joined in the first place. because what you'll find is that people become attached to the mission and the purpose of the organization. And so the why are you a Kiwanian is an important thing to ask people. But everybody has an answer to that. And that answer is generally very positive because everybody's still there. Second question, what is the best thing about this club? Well, the best thing about my club is XYZ. Now you're going to get answers that are all over the map. You're going to get people who are going to say the best thing about this club is our fellowship. You're going to get people who are going to say the best thing is working with kids. You're going to get people who are going to say that the best thing is that we do things for others in the community. You're going to get people who are going to say, well, I just want to give back. All of those are fine answers. The purpose of the question is to get people to identify the things in their mind that are important about the club. And now you hit them with the zinger. This is the bottom line. What does this community really need from us? Here's where you get all your brainstorming answers. This is where people come out with the things that are important to them and with the things that they think the club can do. And this is where you're going to come up with new answers. I would encourage you as you ask these 3 questions to write them down, make them visible, have a flip chart, hang it on a wall, use a blackboard or a whiteboard or whatever capability you have. If you're doing this on a Zoom meeting, you can do it with the chat function in Zoom meetings. You can do anything that you want, but write it down so that the answer is visible and people get committed to what those answers are. And what you've done by asking just those 3 simple questions is to get people to think first about what are the positive things about the club, what are the positive things about my membership, but then the third thing you're doing is getting them to think about what the future is and where they need to go. In the COVID environment, we want to modify that just a little bit in terms of not just thinking about kids, but thinking about families and the whole family unit. Because more and more in the COVID environment, what we're seeing is the things that we have done traditionally focused on children, particularly in the schools, now need to be focused in particular on the family unit, because we've got children interacting with their parents in a virtual learning environment, trying to help the kids through virtual learning. You've got the family interacting if you've got a problem with something like food insecurity or other issues that are affecting the community. So it's not just thinking in terms of our traditional focus of providing service to children, but it's providing service to the whole family unit. So you need to broaden a little bit the things that you're looking at in terms of how do you go with that. And again, don't forget to dream. You have to think about what is possible, not just what is. Past International President Jane Erickson described the Kiwanis dream, and she was the first person to describe it when I heard it this way, and it now makes up a part of the Kiwanis vision. But she said, and I quote, "I dream of the day when all children wake up in communities that love, support, and nurture them." That's a dream. That's a vision for the future. That's something we can all build on. So now we want to talk a little bit about nuts and bolts and how we get to what we're going to build on. I'm going to turn the slide clicker over to Joe Krostick, and Joe's going to talk about the whole idea of planning and some of the specifics of what we do with that plan.
Okay. So we've been talking a lot about vision and mission up to this point, and coming up with your vision as a club and where we go from there, what that might look like, and how it may look a little bit differently even then before COVID started. But a vision statement, as we said, is looking to the future. What do we hope to be? Mission statements are really the clarifying the purpose and the primary objectives of our club. So what's the next step? Where do we go from there? Well, those, I believe, are the building blocks, the foundation, if you will, of putting together a strategic plan, which I'm going to talk about briefly here with you this morning. That's providing the strategies, the goals, and setting some objectives that you're trying to move your club forward in a certain direction so that you can, in fact, achieve your vision. So, what is a strategic plan? Well, I've asked that question many times at club coaching days, for example. We talk about it being a roadmap. It is how you expect to get to your vision from where you are today. So we think about the different roads that we can take, and it's what the tool that you will use really to ensure that you reach your destination, that you in fact do get there. So why do we need it? Don't we know where we're going? Well, maybe not, at least not everybody. So we think what strategic planning does is it gives you the opportunity to provide a clear focus for the club. And it really, you need to build consensus as to what that direction is. And I think that's really important right now for clubs to be thinking about when they are in this COVID environment. In my own club, while we've had a strategic plan for quite a while, we reconvened the strategic planning committee during, I think it was April we started, because we knew that things were a little bit different and we didn't want people to go off track. And we wanted to provide the right direction and focus for our members. So it was a consensus building process, though, because as Greg mentioned earlier, maybe we needed to broaden a little bit some of the things that we were doing, some of the tactics that we were using to achieve the mission of helping those kids find that spot that we want them to be in. So the plan, while we didn't actually change the plan, we did add some new action steps that were important for our club to continue moving forward along its mission and towards its vision. The plan does provide the glue that keeps everybody together because you keep focused on the priorities, as we've mentioned already. It also gives you the mechanism to solve major problems. The thought there is that when you have to make decisions, no matter whether we're in COVID times or not, what we're trying to do here is get everybody moving in the same direction. So we're making decisions that are consistent with what we set out to do. So, we could be asked to do things by clubs or civic organizations that just don't fit our mission. So if we've defined ourselves well in our strategic plan, that's kind of the filter, if you will, that helps us get through that. So it establishes a base from which we can actually get started. But as we said, COVID has changed the rules. Now, we don't need to invent necessarily what we do, but how we do it. Greg used the phrase before that we have to do different things and we have to do things differently. So this time we have to look outside the box in this time in our club's histories to think critically and determine what it is that we can continue to do. You heard Peter Mancuso earlier today say, it's time to get back to work. And he's right. For those clubs that have taken a pause, this is a great opportunity to bring your club together. Talk about what would be in your strategic plan. Think about what you can be doing. So let's get back to work. Let's talk about some examples here. I thought Dave Kelly was great. He gave you some really good ideas on things to do. But the Carolinas Kiwanis haven't been waiting for Dave Kelly's speech today to get things moving. We've had some really good, innovative ideas coming out of our clubs here in the Carolinas. So people are doing some different things. So in Southport, Oak Island, for example, we've traditionally held a fundraiser that was a concert. We have a local band that gives their time and we charge and people come, and we can't do that in the traditional way anymore because we can't go into the community center or the hall and gather that many people. However, if we can do it outdoors, maybe. So hence we have come up with a drive-in concert where the band will be under a tent, cars will be circled around them at the airport, and we will be able to still have a fundraiser. It'll just look different. Traditional golf tournaments, some are still being held in person, but some areas where the virus is a bit more of an issue, we're not holding in-person tournaments anymore, but you can hold a virtual golf tournament. The First Tee here in Brunswick County did that earlier this year. People sign up, they pay less than they would have if they were coming to an in-person tournament, but they wind up having the profit for the club can be about the same because you don't have to pay for greens fees either or the lunch. But people play, they register online, there's services to do that for you. And then you can move forward, have your golf tournament, award some prizes, people report their scores. So you can still have a good time, make a little bit of money. Maybe instead of selling food at a festival, maybe now you have a virtual wine or beer tasting like the Columbia Club has done. Instead of a silent auction and gathering that you typically have, maybe that becomes a virtual online auction. We've seen the Relay for Life do that, and I think some of our clubs are planning to do that right now. A reading program for first graders. Dave had a great example of the Story Corner, I think he called it, or Story Time. We've done a Kiwanis Reading Corner in Southport. I know the Lumberton Club has been recording videos on Facebook, having our members read stories and sharing them, as Dave explained earlier. In Charlotte, instead of doing a more traditional school supplies drive to help kids, what they have done is they had a drive-in, drive-out school supply drive. So we weren't allowed to be at the local Walmart or the Dollar General because they're keeping large groups off their parking lots. However, we did have a car dealership in Charlotte that said you can use our lot. We went there, we advertised it, we put it on Facebook. We were out on the street corner waving people in to come give us school supplies or cash, and it was quite successful. So trying something a little bit different was very effective there. And Meals on Wheels is something that we continue to do, but maybe not as often, delivering frozen meals that our seniors can use as the week goes on. And expanding that as well to doing other food and food insecurity type of service projects, delivering groceries or medical supplies, as has been suggested through KI. Now, you may choose to broaden your mission. Greg mentioned earlier that maybe we do have to think a little bit outside the box here, include activities that are more family-oriented as opposed to just the children. But does that mean we have to change our vision? I don't think so. I mean, you are helping those children by helping the families. So just you may have to broaden your members' interpretation of what that vision is. And that's where this process of putting the plan together and improving your plan can help you. So there is a tool that Kiwanis International has developed. This is available on the KI website. I just want to draw your attention to it. It's the club planning tool. It's been there for several years now, and we've talked about it in club coaching days, but I just want to remind you that it's there. It's a tool you can use now with your clubs as you think about how we move forward right here. And then the first step for the clubs then is who's going to do this. As I mentioned, we reconvened our strategic planning committee in Southport, where we have that as a standing committee. But put a group of people together, 5 or 6 people, might be a few more in some of the larger clubs. If you're a small club, you may just do it at your meetings. You talked, Governor Greg mentioned a few things earlier about the questions that you can prompt people with. Those are things that you can do to get the process started. I think it's important that when you put that committee together that it does represent the diversity of your club. Longtime members, newer members, different age groups, genders, talents and views. Don't ignore the people that that sometimes have a different view, because they may represent others that just aren't as vocal. There are some tools that go with this. The Achieving Club Excellence tools are very good from Kiwanis International. Things such as creating the purpose, planning for club excellence, club scorecard, analyzing your impact, rediscovering your community, quite important right now, I think, as you live through this COVID time. Those needs in the community may be a little different than they were when you first set up your plan, if you're revising your plan, but there's certainly going to be something different out there. And then measuring member satisfaction. I think we all appreciate the importance of keeping our members engaged. Getting them involved in the strategic planning process in and of itself is a way to keep your members engaged during this COVID time. There's no reason you can't have these meetings over Zoom, or whatever platform you've been using, like Google Meet. So please keep your members engaged. Let's keep focused on that. It will help you in the long run. So the next step in strategic planning is to assess what makes your club strong. You may ask the question, what do you like the most about your club? But what does make your club strong? Do you have a signature project that is particularly effective, that people know your club because of that project? Do you have terrific kids programs in each of your elementary schools, or a key club in each of your high schools? Even though you can't necessarily go into those schools now, think about what's going to come on the other end of this COVID crisis. We are going to get back into schools. It's just a question of when, not if. So let's try to think about what we can do. Let's dream, as Greg said, for what it's going to look like when we get to the other side. Also think about where your weaknesses are. Are you the best kept secret in town? Have you not been particularly effective with public relations and communications out to our stakeholders? So maybe that's an area that you can start planning for right now. If our membership is aging out, or we're otherwise contracting in club size, think about how you're going to get new members. We don't have to wait till after the COVID crisis is behind us, but maybe some of your events to build membership will have to wait. So think about those things. If you're not making enough money in your club to fund your service projects, that could be a weakness as well. So these are things you can be thinking about now, is how are we going to raise money? We still have to fund those scholarships we promised. So what are we going to do to make this effective? So other steps in the planning process: developing the plan, that's determining what your strategies and tactics are. That Kiwanis tool that I mentioned earlier helps you think about how to classify those strategies and tactics. You can look at the Kiwanis International Strategic Plan. You can look at the District Strategic Plan. These are examples out there that you can use. Starting with a blank piece of paper can be difficult, so I really encourage you to think about using the tools. And then you got to remember that you have to communicate your plan. Once you have established what your objectives are and your priorities and your vision statement, you want to make sure that's shared throughout your club. So maybe at a Zoom meeting, even now, do a presentation on your strategic plan with your club. Prepare a 1 or a 2-page document that you can share with everybody as a PDF that they can look at before your meeting. Don't keep it a secret. You'll want to make sure you're getting buy-in from your entire club. Implementing the plan is the next step, then, and then measuring your results. So you want to be able to set goals that you can measure and know which direction you're going. So it's a great way to ensure survival for our clubs. And I'm going to kick it back to Greg, and Greg's going to have some closing comments and some thoughts as we continue on here in this session. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. I pretty much introduced yesterday, for those of you who are with us with CLE, to the 5 elements of successful Kiwanis clubs. but we've got a much larger audience today, and I wanted to end the planning process discussion with going back to what I said about the research that's been done by Kiwanis International on the 5 elements of what constitutes a successful Kiwanis Club. Because as you're planning for the future of your club, as you're putting down the vision of what you want to be when you grow up for the next 100 years, as you are putting together your thoughts about your contribution to the community, you want to keep in mind these 5 things as you pull all of this together. The first is relevant hands-on service, and relevant is an important descriptor here. The idea is that relevance changes over time as your community changes. So you need to continually be revisiting what hands-on service are you providing in your club, not just continuing to regenerate the services that you've provided historically. So continue to ask yourselves, are we providing what the community needs of us? Dave Kelly raised the issue of having fun. Fun is an important thing, and when Kiwanis International looked at over 6,000 successful Kiwanis clubs worldwide over a long span of time, having fun as a group of people together became one of the things that stood out as something that we need to do, and we need to do more of and continuously in what we do. Kiwanis is a lot of hard work. We put a lot of energy into the service we provide, but it's important to have fun and to have fun together as like-minded people as we do that. The third is best management practices. You need to determine through Kiwanis education, through your own research, what the best practices are for managing your clubs. And you need to try and maintain that with your board of directors, your officers, and your club members in terms of managing the club in a way that's going to be responsible and responsive. You need to be a club that is well known within your community. You could call that marketing if you want, but your community needs to know who you are and what you do and the kind of impact that you have on the children in your community, the families in your community, the members of your community, because that's where you're going to get new members to keep your club vital. That's where you're going to get volunteers to help you continue to deliver services. That's where you're going to be able to make your fundraising appeals, is through the notoriety of the marketing of your club. And finally, the sponsorship of the Kiwanis family. And that's our Kiwanis service leadership programs and the Kiwanis branded programs. Those are the things that are uniquely Kiwanis. Those are the things that no other service organization has. Those are things that no other organization can bring to your community. If your community can have a lot of really good service projects coming from a lot of different sources, but only a Kiwanis club can start a builders club or a key club or can run a terrific kids program. So if you don't do it in your community, it won't get done. So you need to have an active role in supporting the Kiwanis family sponsorship. Does not mean doing that to the exclusion of other projects that you may have within the community, but it does mean that it's an important part of being a successful Kiwanis club. And at the end, what we're talking about is to think creatively. And that's, we've used that term several times this afternoon, this morning. You need to create that shared vision with your members so that everybody in the club knows what your vision is, what you're working toward, what the future holds for your club. So it needs to be well communicated. You need to have a plan. You have to have that roadmap. What we're telling you, in particular in the COVID environment now, where the rules have all changed, is to make sure that you focus not just on why you're doing what you're doing and what you're going to do specifically, but focus on the how, because the how is going to become more and more important until we get through this new normal of the COVID restrictions and back to something that looks more like what it was last calendar year. And remember, critical thinking is simply, it's not anything that's difficult. It's simply asking yourself, what if? It's part of that whole objective. Never stop dreaming. So we started this conversation with the idea of hanging on to the dream and having a dream and articulating it. And we want to end with that same thought. We want you to maintain that dream, keep it up with your club, and never stop dreaming. Never stop asking what if, never stop asking what can we do to make this community a better place to live, a better place for our kids.